Hey everyone, welcome to another sit down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. And today we got something very special for you. It was certainly special for me. I have a sit down with former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, former Mayor of New York, former America's Mayor, former Trump attorney, the one and only Rudy Giuliani. And this is a classic as far as I'm concerned. I never thought in a million years this would ever happen, but it has. Before we get to that, I want to thank everybody for the giveaway. I think in the last 2.5 weeks, we crossed 525,000 subs. We put on 25,000 in the last 2.5 weeks. So we're going to be announcing the winner very soon. Stay tuned, I think early next week, and we'll know who's coming out to have a sit down with me at Slices and then come in and watch how we do all this filming. I think it's going to be very interesting, and I'm looking forward to meeting with the winner. We got other prizes that are being given away too, so thank you very much. Once again, we do very much appreciate that you tune into our content. You have a lot of choices on YouTube. Thank you very much, and this is how we show our appreciation. MichaelFranzese.com, it is growing, getting bigger every single day. Over 15,000 people now in my crew, encouraging one another, patting each other on the back, sharing valuable information. I'm jumping in. It's just a great resource for all of you, so jump in. And lastly, Sammy the Bull, sit down with Michael Franzese. Stay tuned. Things are in the works. That's all I'm going to say at this point in time. So let's get to the sit down with Rudy. You know, the last time I saw Rudy Giuliani was 37 years ago in a courtroom in Manhattan. And I'll tell you what happened. I was getting off a plane. I had my own plane that time, and agents picked me up as I landed in Long Island. They'd taken me. I'm under indictment or under arrest or whatever. I thought they were taking me to the Eastern District of New York because I knew Larry Irizzo. You remember him. He was my former partner in the gas business. He had turned informant, was implicating me in the whole gas tax scheme. But to my surprise, they were taking me into Manhattan to see Rudy Giuliani and his crew. I had been arrested there on an information, soon to be indicted. So that's kind of the lay of the land. I had one small encounter with Rudy at that time in a courtroom. We'll get into it. You'll hear it. And let me tell you who brought this together. My very dear friend, Joe Pagliarulo. They call him Joe Pags. He has a syndicated radio show. He knows Rudy very well. He and I became fast friends over the years, and he was the one that orchestrated this, put it together. Rudy agreed. I agreed. So now you got it. It's epic. It's classic. I don't know if it'll ever happen again. Maybe it will. And I want to be clear on this. We don't discuss any politics. This is not a political thing. It's all about the mob, Rudy's involvement in prosecuting, my involvement with him, and I think you're going to love it. So here we go. Joe Pags, take it away.
Thanks a lot for stopping by. Look, this is an historic interview for my money because these two guys, the last time they saw each other, and I think the last time they said a syllable to each other was about 37 years ago in a court in New York, in the Southern District of New York. It is Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, the former U.S. attorney from the Southern District, also a former associate attorney general for Ronald Reagan. And we all know Rudy Giuliani. He's the guy. And also Michael Franzese, the former defendant in that case, a former capo regime for the Colombo crime family in New York. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming together on this.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Pags.
It's almost like the start of a joke. Three Italian guys sit down for an interview. You know what I mean? So it's interesting because I interview both of you a lot, and I like both of you a lot, and I think that your stories are amazing. And Rudy, I was telling Michael this before we even started today. The reason why this came together and why this is happening is that I brought him up to you, and you said, "How's he doing?" Instead of saying that SOB, instead of saying that piece of garbage, you said, "How's he doing today?" You know, I believe in redemption. Fill me in on that if you don't mind. Let's start from that, and we'll go back to the 1980s.
First of all, having prosecuted so many cases, they never were. I know this sounds strange, but they never were personal. They were all professional. Some of the people I prosecuted, whether they were organized crime or white collar crime, or some of them were nice people who just happened to be involved in that awful kind of business.
Yeah.
Some of them were horrible people. There was no reason ever to get personal unless they did something personal to me. And second, I watched Michael's transformation from afar, read about it. when somebody says something like that, you always wonder, is it, I'm going to turn my back on it. I'm going to reform. I'm going to change. Half the time it's true and half the time it's not true.
Right.
And so you have to have a little skepticism, but you never have to give up hope. And then when I saw over a period of years that this is real, I was very impressed, because it's a hard thing to do. It doesn't matter if we're talking about putting aside the mafia or putting aside insider trading or putting aside the people you pay bribes with or whatever the hell the crime is.
Right.
It's hard to put that, to change your personality so you're not impelled to do it. I mean, how many people did I put in jail and, a year later they're back doing the same thing? Right.
And when I interviewed Rudy, Michael, I showed you the video because I asked Rudy, hey, have you got a message for him? And I showed it to you, and you genuinely seemed surprised.
Well, I was, but, I do remember, too, back when, I did walk away from the life and things were starting to change for me, a lot of law enforcement people kind of weighed in on it, and they said they didn't believe it, and I was pulling the wool over the government's eyes. But, Rudy, you may not remember this, but they asked you, and it's in an interview, and you said, I believe it might be sincere. Michael's a fairly smart guy. He knows what's going on, and I think it might be sincere. So even way back then, you had something nice to say, and that I really appreciated that back then.
What blows? Well, go ahead.
And I was exactly, that's exactly right. I mean, exactly what I'm saying now. When somebody, first of all, it's unusual for somebody to really say something like that. And you said it in a more powerful way than a lot of people say it. But again, it could be acting. But there's also no reason to cut off the possibility. I mean, it does happen. I know people going way back before Michael, because I'm so darn old. There were drug addicts and even drug dealers who got out of jail, got over it, and they had very, very good lives and families. And then I know people who wasted their lives away. So,
well, you said a line to me, Rudy. You said, I believe in redemption. And it's not that I didn't think that you did. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and we've been friends now for several years. I feel like you believe in the goodness in people, but as the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District, possibly and probably the most important district in the country, do you believe in redemption as you're trying him, or you worry about that later?
You worry about it later.
I mean, because
you worry about it later.
Right.
During the investigation and the trial, it's all single-minded, right? You've got to catch the person, and sometimes you'll pick up vibrations about them that tell you they're really terrible people, or they're not. I mean, with Mafia people, I would listen to a lot of tapes, and I could kind of tell the ones who liked committing murder and the ones who didn't.
Right.
Now, that's not much of a distinction for the person who gets killed, but it does tell you a little something about the person.
Yeah.
And I could tell the insider traders who really enjoyed the game of just being a cheat. And then those who did it because they were desperate and needed money, or they were too embarrassed to say they were losing money. It was almost ego more than criminality. So you get to know people. But when you're convicted, you can't start thinking about redeeming.
Absolutely. Well, when you're in the courtroom, you want to win. Michael, when you're in the courtroom, you want to win. And in this one, you did, and we'll get into that in a bit. But when you're sitting across the way from Rudy Giuliani, he's your enemy. He's the guy that you want to beat in court. What's the mindset from your table, from the defendant's table?
Well, back then especially, I had a whole different, view of law enforcement. You got to understand, Joe, I grew up, with my dad, who was a very high-profile figure. I loved my dad. He was my idol growing up. And all I ever saw was law enforcement coming after him, what we considered harassing our family. My dad used to put things into my head about law enforcement. So I grew up hating law enforcement. So they were my enemy almost from birth. And so when I'm sitting across a defense table, I'm not liking anybody. I don't want to like them, in any way. I just want to beat them, want to do everything that's possible. And that's the mentality that most of us had, maybe for different reasons. A lot of guys that grew up on the street, they just didn't like law enforcement because they were street guys, So you're always trying to win, and at whatever cost, believe me.
It's MichaelFranzese.com. That's his website, MichaelFranzese.com. Rudy'sCommonSense.com. Go there, an incredible podcast and vodcast that Rudy puts on every day. It's Rudy Giuliani and Michael Franzese. An historic conversation, and I'm glad that we're doing it. Let's go in the Wayback Machine. You're both from Brooklyn, New York. You're both Italian-American, right? You both grow up where your father is the dominant figure. Mine was too, Mario Pagliarulo. And we look up to them, and we try to either emulate them or we try to learn from them. And you both sort of had the same vision. But Rudy, you decided your dad had made some mistakes and you would go a different way. Michael, you said, I want to be like my dad. Rudy, let me start with you. Am I right in how I characterized that? You looked at your dad and said, this is what I should do?
Right. I'll tell you, I lived in Brooklyn in Flatbush for 7 years. My father had gone to prison before I was born for armed robbery. He was running a bar and restaurant, and then later pizza place. And he decided somewhere when I was about 5 or 6 that he had to get me out of Brooklyn because I had an older cousin who I admired very much and who was already beginning to get into trouble. And he said, no, I got to get you out of here. He told my mother that. I mean, I didn't know this until years later.
Right.
So he took me out of Brooklyn, and then I ended up in the suburbs. I ended up in Garden City South in North Belmore, and then I got a scholarship to high school. And I think, but for that, I could be Michael, or maybe a lot worse.
That's an interesting. By the way, my grandfather was the fire chief in Belmore, New York. Just to let you know the circle that we're in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Belmore.
Yeah, Don Mealy.
8 years.
Yeah. So Michael, what about that? Did you know that Rudy's dad had that past, and that he very easily probably could have been you?
No, not really. You know, the thing that I remember with Rudy, and I don't know, Rudy, I'd love to know if this is true or not, that, you know, you read the book that Joe Bonanno had wrote, and that you were really incensed about that book, the way he, you know, categorized the mafia, which, by the way, a lot of guys on the street felt the same way. We thought it was ridiculous that he wrote a book like that. And
I'll tell you what happened, Michael. I was the Associate Attorney General, and I asked my boss and the president if they could demote me to being U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, because it was my dream job. I had been an assistant there. And while I was preparing to become U.S. Attorney, I got briefed on all the cases that were going on. The FBI had a whole bunch of organized crime cases, but they were here and there, and they were all over the place. And then I read Joe Bonanno's book, which is an extremely arrogant book, about how he really is like the head of state, and the commission is really like part of the UN. It's like the UN. It's all garbage. But in it, he did a complete outline of when the commission began back in the late 20s or 30s, who ran it then. And then he did a line of succession that broke off about 12 years earlier. Now, I had helped to write the RICO statute with Professor Blakey. And the minute I saw that, I said, thank you, Joe. You just gave me half of a RICO case. You just proved to me you're in the business of crime. So to simplify RICO, that's what RICO is. So if you go commit one robbery and it's a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy. You do one drug deal. But if you are in the business of robbing banks with the same people over and over, or in the business of selling drugs, or in the business of extorting people, it's a RICO violation. Well, he just laid it all out. Now, he thought he was smart because it was all beyond the statute of limitations, but he never read the RICO statute. The RICO statute doesn't have a statute of limitations.
For those who are watching, I just wanted to let people know, RICO is Racketeer Influenced and Corruption Organizations Act. And that act had been around for about 10 years, as I read it, Rudy, before you actually learned how to utilize it, because nobody really used it yet. Michael, if you don't mind, what were the families saying when Bonanno put the book out? I mean, he basically, as Rudy said, just telegraphed for law enforcement, here's what we're doing, here's how we're doing it, and screw you, you can't do anything about it. How did the family react?
Well, I'll tell you what they said, you know, and this is a little bit before my time, but, you know, Joe Bonanno was on the hit list. He was supposed to get killed, and they sent him out, because he was a boss, they sent him out to Arizona and just said, keep quiet and don't bother us and stay away from us. And they gave him his life. And all I ever heard is, we made a mistake. You know, this guy put us on blast, you know, by writing a stupid book like this. Everybody was upset about it. And then, of course, you know, Rudy just filled it in. He picked it up and started to run with the RICO Act. So it's even worse than we thought, you know, what that book would cause. So, yeah, people were very upset with him about it. That's all I ever heard. Nothing but negative stuff.
Rudy, I know that you helped write RICO, and again, it's Rudy Giuliani, Rudy's Common Sense. Go to his website, rudyscommonsense.com. Also an amazing talk show hosted, of course, America's Mayor. And Michael Franzese, michaelfranzese.com. Go there, become part of his crew. He's a born-again Christian, he's a pastor, and he's a former copper regime with the Colombo crime family. So Rudy, RICO was on the books, you helped write it, but nobody utilized it the correct way. Going in, I guess the Bonanno book certainly gave you the outline, but going in, did you already know that you were going to try to use RICO when you got the job in the Southern District?
Minute I read there's a section in his book with 4 chapters, and the name of the subsection is The Commission, and in it is a chart in which he lays out the original 5 families, and then the succession of those 5 families down to, I believe, 1968. I looked at it and I said, now my job is to take it to 1981.
Right.
Or 82 or 83, whenever that was 83.
Right, 83.
But you gave me already the corporate papers. You gave me the corporate organization.
Wow.
Which it's hard sometimes to get a jury to understand this is a business of crime. Bonanno's book explained this was a business that was so highly sophisticated. They didn't want to have trouble with each other, so they set up this commission structure so that they could try as much as possible to work out their differences without killing each other. It was, in fact, a very intelligent thing to do, but it directly violated the racketeering, influence, corrupt organization statute, which allows you to put in all kinds of evidence you couldn't otherwise put in. So then I went to the FBI and the Justice Department, where I had been number 3, and I said, please give me 20 agents. I want half of them to be counterintelligence agents, the guys who go after the communists, because they know how to break in better.
Right.
And basically, we broke into everybody's house, car. We broke into Fat Tony Salerno's social club on Pleasant Avenue. We broke into a car. We broke into.
You basically bugged the entire mob. You bugged everybody.
Yeah, I can tell you.
See, I didn't use FBI agents. Couldn't have done that.
Now, Michael, were you aware of that?
These guys who for 30 years were doing it to the communists.
Were you guys aware that they were actually actively doing this? And after Bonanno's book, and after you saw what Giuliani was trying to do, did you guys adjust, or was there so much arrogance in the families that they said, we're not going to change, they can't get us?
Okay, well, we found out afterwards that they had broken into Sally Avellino and Tony Ducks, who was the boss at that time, at his car, and I know the evidence was very damaging there. Also, the Casa Storta restaurant where Jerry Langella used to hang out and hold court. I think a lot of the commission information came off of those bugs. So we found out afterwards, and Joe, the answer to that, no, the guys never adjusted. And the conversation just kept going on, and, more informants started to happen, and, more surveillance was put out there, and we just heard horrible things all the time. We heard it in the Gotti case. I mean, there was 2,000 hours of tapes on Gotti, and they were all bad. Him and a couple of the other guys. So, I always say that part of the reason for the mob's demise at that era was that nobody adjusted. They really didn't. I mean, law enforcement was so far ahead of us at that point in time. And the RICO thing hit everybody by surprise. It was very hard to defend, as Rudy knows. It was a tough statute to defend. And, it just got us all. I mean, I don't know how many people went down.
I want to make sure that I outline it the correct way, and I'm sorry for interrupting. It's Michael Franzese. He's on one coast. It's Rudy Giuliani. He's on the other coast. I'm in between. I'm in Texas. And we're really glad to have this sit down. 3 Italian guys talking about stuff. Rudy, had they not been so arrogant, had you not had the yuppie Don, and I don't think you like that name, Michael, but that's what they called you, a guy who was making millions of dollars. If you didn't have John Gotti, a guy who was flashy as could be, Teflon Don, if you didn't have Bonanno writing a freaking book, did you have as much of a chance of prosecuting? Did their arrogance crank you up and get you going in the morning?
I don't know that it did that. It sure gave me a lot of opportunities to get evidence that I otherwise wouldn't get.
So you kind of liked that they were you liked that they were flashy. You liked that they were flashy.
Handed me the theory of the case on a silver platter. So that's very unusual. I mean, I did RICO cases against Michael Milken and Boesky, and I had to really work hard to put together all that background evidence. So he gave me the background evidence. That made it easier. He gave me a plan, just take each one of those families from 68, just do the line of succession.
Right.
Take it from 68 to now. And let's get it on tape as much as we can. the best tape that I always thought, the two best tapes were Fat Tony, because he had a great sense of humor, and Matty Iannello, because that was a video and audio. And Matty's tape was, we broke into his office in Manhattan, where I can't remember if it was a Tuesday or Wednesday night, he would hold court. And the court was to adjudicate the disputes between the private carders. I mean, the mob controlled private carding in New York,
wow,
northern New Jersey, and a lot of Westchester. And it involved a lot of hits, a lot of killing, a lot of disputes, people getting angry at each other, moving on each other's routes. Again, intelligently, they set up, they trusted Matty, and Matty would resolve the disputes. And it was fascinating to listen to. It was like listening to a courtroom.
So you actually liked it. I mean,
Judy.
I came in with a different perspective. You actually liked it because they were handing it to you on a platter. Michael, in retrospect, obviously the arrogance is what brought him down. I mean, that's obvious.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
But while it was going, Michael, while that was happening, were you guys going, hey, pipe down a little bit? Or were you like, hey, it's cool, I'm in Forbes magazine. Hey, look at me, I've got a brand new flashy car and a new suit. I mean, was anybody recognizing what was happening around them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, a lot of forget Gotti for a second, but a lot of the old timers, even Fat Tony, I mean, everybody was getting nervous. They wanted everybody to be low key, but it was too late at that point. I mean, who knows how much surveillance had been collected, how many tapes there were at that point in time. It was just too late because these indictments started coming down like boom, boom, one after another. I remember I was in MDC, on the Eastern District case, actually. And there was a trial every week, an indictment every week, another person locked up, who was turning informant. It just happened so fast within that 3 or 4 year period. The indictments were just rolling out, so we didn't have time, really.
Rudy, I saw a quote from the early 1980s, probably 83 or 84, where you said of Michael Franzese, I think you called him Franzese. I think you pronounced it more Italian than we do now. But you said this Michael Franzese, obviously he's taken after his father. How big a deal was Sonny Franzese as far as taking the mob down? How big a deal was he for you guys in law enforcement to get? And then did that in turn make you look at Michael and his brother John and everybody else?
Sure, because, until you find out different, you think the family passes it down. Although there are examples of the opposite happening.
Right.
But you have to assume in law enforcement that that's not the case. And Sonny, his father, was one of the major figures particularly in Brooklyn, but in organized crime in general. I mean, there are certain people that are more respected than others, maybe more feared or more respected, one or the other. And he was one of them. He was considered one of the most significant people. In Brooklyn, you had Colombo way back, you had Gallo. Remember their wars.
Well, Sonny probably would have been a boss had he not been locked up, right? He was in succession. He probably would take the family over.
But he had sort of the standing of a boss anyway, even when he wasn't. He was seen as a very, very influential and tough guy. If you were in law enforcement and you caught him, that'd be a real big deal.
Michael, did you know the weight that your father carried around? Did you know that he was going to be a target at all times?
Yeah, I grew up with it, so I knew it. I'll tell you how by surprise that we were caught on this. I had just come back from, I landed in a private airport. I had a jet at that time, and I got off the plane, and the agents were waiting for me to lock me up. So they locked me up, they get me in a car, and I said to them, by the way, guys, where are we going? And they said, we're going to Manhattan. And I said, what are we doing in Manhattan? The Eastern District is in Brooklyn. I thought they were locking me up on that case. And they said, no, Rudy Giuliani indicted you on this big racketeering case. I said, about what? I didn't even know what it was about at that time. I said, explain it to me. I said, you guys must have made a mistake. Doesn't make sense. And I'll tell you, I took it to another level. I went in and sat down with, I think Bruce Baird was one of the prosecutors, Bruce Baird and Aaron Marcoux.
He was. He absolutely got great memory.
Yeah, and I went in against the advice of my attorney, John Jacobs. He said, I don't want you to do this. I said, John, this has got to be a mistake. I have nothing to do with Manhattan and the Southern District. I want to go in and tell them before they indict me because they locked me up on an information. So I sat down with Bruce Baird and I said, tell me what this case is about because I think you made a mistake. I couldn't talk my way out of it. I got indicted, obviously, but that's how caught by surprise I was until, I started to see what the case was all about.
And we'll talk about you riding through New York City after Rudy was the mayor in a little while, because you've got quite a story to tell there. It's Michael Franzese, michaelfranzese.com. Go there, become part of his crew. He's got a huge YouTube following, over 500,000 now. Rudy's Common Sense. Go and check out everything that the mayor does. It's amazing. Also an incredible talk show host. So Rudy, you focus on the father. The father ends up getting a long sentence. Michael ends up deciding he's going to get into the family business. So you already know his name because there's a family lineage there. At what point did you say to yourself, this guy is making money hand over fist and he's doing something wrong? We got to focus on him now. And when it comes to RICO, this sounds like a 5-part question, but this is very interesting to me. With RICO, the soldier does something on the street and you could take down the boss because of it. So does the capo regime, the captain like Michael was, does he still raise a bigger red flag? Or now are you watching everybody like a hawk because you could take the family down no matter what anybody does?
Well, although the soldier on the street can incriminate the boss, you really need a connection, a little closer connection if you're going to want to get a conviction.
Okay.
So the capo regime becomes very important because the way it works is the captain is going to be closer to the people on the street. So he's going to be directly responsible for what they're doing. And then he's going to pass that responsibility on to the boss. So it really is the way I mean, they function the way a business would function, a well-organized business. At least the good families did. The good meaning the better organized families.
Right.
There was a lot of discipline. Everybody knew their role. It was easy to put them on a chart because they knew where they belonged.
So you brought him up. You brought him in for racketeering, and he was stunned by that. So it was a very good job of you guys, surreptitiously gathering information. How close the case did you think it was? And was this about the gasoline stuff?
I don't remember any one case, but most of them came out of recordings.
Okay.
A few of them came out of witnesses that you had to really worry about your witnesses because the witnesses, I mean, I had witnesses we put on the stand who committed 13 murders. We had a witness that Michael will probably remember who chopped up 49 bodies. Mm-hmm. And he testified. He was the main witness against Catalano. It was a disaster when they cross-examined him for 2 weeks. And not only did he chop up the bodies, he was kind of proud of the work that he did.
There was a moment.
I think I wanted to put him somewhere when he did that.
Right.
Not everything goes right, by the way.
There are moments
on either side.
There are moments in our lives, and there's for those who are watching and listening, there's a bit of a Skype delay. I don't mean to talk over anybody. It's Rudy Giuliani, the Honorable former mayor, America's mayor, my good friend, Michael Franzese, michaelfranzese.com, former capo regime, the Colombo crime family. We've also become very good friends. And this conversation is one that I think is pretty historic. But there are details in our lives that we remember. I can remember a moment when I was 7 years old, somebody said something. Maybe you guys remember something when you were 15. So there's always a moment in life. Michael remembers a moment in the courtroom that, Rudy, I'm not so sure you do. But Sonny Franzese, for those who are watching and listening, was sentenced to a half a century in jail, in prison. And Michael, you say that Rudy told you something. And Rudy, I don't know if you'll remember this, because I brought it up with you once before.
About Sonny? We're talking about his
No, his dad got half a century, but then you said something to Michael when you were trying him. And Michael, if you don't mind, relay that to my audience, what you remember Rudy saying to you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Rudy, I saw you in the courtroom only one time. I don't think you ever visited. Maybe I wasn't paying attention if you were in the back or whatever, but there was one time when, and this is the only time I saw you there, when Aaron Marcoux, I think, and Baird, you were talking to them. John Jacobs was representing me, and a little conversation came back, and John
said something to you, and you turned back and said, you know, Franzese can get double what his father got on this case, 100 years. And then you kind of walked by me, and it was kind of stunning. I don't know if you remember that.
You said you were going to put him away for 100 years, Rudy.
Yes.
I could very well have said that. I can't remember it, but it would be the kind of thing I would say. Yeah, kind of thing I would do.
I'm glad you don't remember it, Rudy. It wasn't a good moment.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a friendly moment for you. That's for sure, Michael. So let me ask you about that specific case, because you say you don't remember the exact details of every case. Obviously, you had a bunch of people working for you, but there was a star witness that you were arguing with the Eastern District about, and it was Michael's partner, Rizzo. And this guy, Rizzo, Eastern District wanted him. They didn't want to give him up. You wanted him, and you were Rudy Giuliani, for God's sake, so you ended up getting him. But the defense tore this guy apart. In retro, do you remember that, first of all? And in retrospect, maybe leave him in the Eastern District and don't bring him over? Maybe you would have had a better chance with Michael?
I mean, we make some mistakes. There's no question we make some mistakes like that. I was actually telling you the one that I did remember, Vito Arena.
Yeah.
In the Castellano case, he had very, very strong evidence, and he had pretty darn good corroboration. But the kind of crimes that he committed, you could see the jury almost getting ready to faint or vomit. I mean, literally, he was a butcher that they used to chop bodies up, and he liked doing it. And that came across in his testimony. No, you have situations like that. You don't know how a witness is going to perform when he gets on a witness stand. Sometimes they're great when you prepare them and they fall apart on the witness stand. Sometimes they're terrible, like a performance. They're terrible in preparation. They go on the witness stand and they surprise the hell out of you. So sometimes you ask for something, you get it, and you probably would have been better if you've been more disciplined about it.
It's rare that the mob would win against Rudy Giuliani's Southern District, but you did, Michael. You won, and you actually do attribute it to Rizzo coming over. I mean, what did you guys do when he got on the stand?
I'll tell you what happened. Because again, I was kind of stunned at being indicted in this case, but then I understood when I saw some of the evidence come out. When Rizzo took the stand, I'm saying, what is he going to say? He doesn't know anything about this, nothing at all. And he got on there, and he didn't do well, and we did. We tore him up. And I think what happened, as a matter of fact, I'm almost positive, is that he went back to the Eastern District. He was going to be the main witness in this whole gasoline tax case against me. And the Eastern District was so upset with him that we beat him on the prior case that they were ready to throw him out of the witness protection program. And I know that because he was sending word back to his son. He actually, Rudy, you're not going to believe this, he actually wanted me to help him escape, that he was making an appearance in the Eastern District. He was setting it up with the marshals.
Before he testified?
No, this was after. After. He wanted me to help him escape so that he wouldn't have to, continue in this thing with me. And I think the only reason that the Eastern District gave me a deal was because we tarnished their main witness against me. He was the guy. And now they were afraid that if they took me to trial, that we would beat him again. And then they gave me that deal for 10 years.
If Rizzo doesn't come over to the Southern District, Michael, do you think you get convicted?
Well, they wouldn't. I don't think they would give me the deal that they gave me. Believe it or not, 10 years was like, the greatest deal in the world. And I had a $15 million fine and restitution. But still, with the amount of time that guys were getting back then, that was a real deal to get 10 years. And that was under the old law. So we still had parole, even though nobody really made it. We had it. But I don't think they would have given me that deal. They would have taken me to trial without a doubt. And then who knows, if I would have won or lost. There was another battle.
In America, it's called La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours. In Italy, it's called the Mafia. We're talking about the mob, a former capo regime of the Colombo crime family, Michael Franzese. Go to michaelfranzese.com. Of course, the former U.S. Attorney, Southern District, former Associate Attorney General. Also, of course, America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani, joins us too. Rudy'sCommonSense.com. Go there. Rudy, you sound like you're all business. Go ahead.
I want to mention one thing. I want to tell you how effective these tapes were. We were on trial for several weeks. I had, it was me and Jimmy Rotunda were the main, the two main defendants. And then we had 15 co-defendants. Half of them I didn't know. I hadn't met them. But there was one guy that was a union guy. And I'll never forget, I forget his name now, but he was a nice guy. I had never met him before. But they mentioned him in the opening statements to the jury. And then for, I don't know how many, 10 weeks we were on trial, they never mentioned this guy again. And so we were joking. We were saying, hey, what are you worried about? At lunchtime, you're going home. They don't even know who you are. They forgot all about you. You're going home. Last day before it goes to summation, they play an audio tape about this guy. And here's the tape. He's in the conference room of this leasing company that we were all charged around, right? And he's addressing a couple of people and he's saying, hey, remember what we're doing here is a crime. If this place is bugged, we're all going to jail. Well, I got to tell you, Rudy, just like that, Rudy, we were laughing hysterical. All the defendants.
Wow.
He gets convicted. He got convicted and he got 7 years as a result of that one 10-minute tape. That was it.
Scot-free the entire time. It's Michael Franzese and Rudy Giuliani. I have to ask you, Rudy, you sound like you're all business. I want to convict these guys. I'm somebody, I want to clean up the streets. I love my city, so on. Michael, it was more personal for you guys. I've actually talked to you about this because the mob, they just get rid of you if you're a problem. Was there any talk of getting rid of Rudy Giuliani back in the day?
Yes, there was. So that's it. That's part one of the interview. Yes, it's a little bit of a cliffhanger. You're going to hear some more stuff about this. The rest of it is very, very interesting. And I got to tell you, this was epic. It was classic for me. You may not feel that way, but you know, you got to understand, he and I were on opposite sides, you know, of the fence at one time. And Rudy Giuliani was not a guy that was well liked on the street at all. I mean, he put everybody away, prosecuted everybody, and was very successful, by the way. You've heard half of it. You're going to hear the other half of it. Some things are going to surprise you, but stay tuned. And there was something pretty drastic put out on Rudy and one other person. You're going to be surprised to hear that. So stay tuned. Part 2 coming up soon. You're going to love it. So what else? Everything else is good. Mother's Day weekend is coming up, so treat your moms the right way, everyone. That's May 9th, Sunday. We love our moms. You know, mine is gone now since 2012, and you know what? We miss them when they're gone, so treat your moms right today. Happy Mother's Day to all of you out there. Hope you have a wonderful day, and that's it. So how do I always leave you? Be safe, be healthy, God bless, and I will see you next time.